to download and hover over that, and it'll give you the phone number. So with that, we'll assume everybody has gone ahead and answered the polling questions. And we are going to, I'm going to expand this out so you can see the PowerPoint, excuse me, a little bit better. I'm going to move the chat over so you can still chat. If you have any questions during the webinar, then please go ahead and type them into the chat pod. And let's go ahead and switch to our next slide here. Okay, so today this is the Illinois WorkNet Customer Group Redesign webinar. And we're going to cover some background information because there are some people that are relatively new to customer groups or haven't used customer groups before. We will take a look at how we currently use customer groups and compare that with the proposed redesign. And with that, we want to get your feedback on that process, especially the two categories of customers we're going to specifically be talking about are the Universal Self-Access customers as well as the IWDS customers, and then we'll take a look at some next steps. Now, for those that are relatively new to customer groups or haven't ever heard of a customer group, here's what we do. The customer group is just another tool to help you with working with your customer. It's available through Illinois WorkNet, and what you can do is you can put your customers in these customer groups, and you can ask them to take a career interest survey. You can have them complete some activities. You can have them complete pre- and post assessments, and there's also a tool in there to help you communicate with the customer. You can send them emails and so forth. And with this, in some cases, in some areas, what they have the case managers do, they'll ask a person to complete some of these activities so that, let's say, Pam is going to meet with her case manager on Friday. They'll tell them, go ahead and complete these activities prior to meeting with your case manager. And then all that is just right at the fingertips of the case manager whenever prior to the meeting. Now, for those who are saying, well, who is in a customer group? To put a person into a customer group, they need to have an Illinois WorkNet individuals account. And you say, well, okay, well, that's really neat, but how do I set up a customer group? Well, the only people right now that can actually set up customer groups are Illinois WorkNet coordinators and the workforce professionals who have been given access at the by state level staff. So, but once they have set up a group, they can add you, the workforce professional, to the group. And once you are added to the group, however many groups they add you to, you can start adding Illinois WorkNet customers to that group. I see that in one of the comments that I was cutting out, so I'm going to pull the microphone closer. But if you still are having some difficulties, you can call into the conference call line, and that conference call number, put your cursor over the yellow phone up in the upper right-hand corner, and it will, and you'll be able to listen via the conference call line, and you do not have to use a PIN to do that. Okay, so with the customer group information, here's just a snapshot of what a customer group looks like. And so right now what you can do once you, the workforce professional, are added to a group, you can add customers to the group as long as they have an individual's account. Once they're added to the group, you see a variety of information. You see their contact information. Some of the things through our past programs that workforce professionals have felt was good information that they use quite a bit was some of the answers that you need, or some of the parts of information that you need to help a customer recover their password. Specifically with the Summer Youth Employment Program, this last summer we had an area on the customer groups where you could see if the customer had an account in IWDS, and you could see the status that it was linked to the accounts were linked together, their Illinois workNet account and their IWDS account. We also have, as I mentioned before, you can ask a customer to complete a career interest inventory, and whenever they complete those career interest surveys, then you can, if it's available, if they've completed it and saved the results within their Illinois workNet account, then you can view those results using the customer group. Now, as I mentioned before, we've had what we call the Summer Youth Employment Program. We've done that for 2 years now. And last year we made those activities where the customers could save their responses within their activity. So whenever they did this, it would save within their account, and the case manager or the workforce professional could view their activity responses. So what we've done now is we have a customer summary page, because you'll be able to see their Summer Youth Employment Program results and assessment results, as well as their activity responses. But we've also, since then, we've made those activities available to the general public. So now anyone, as you put them into a customer group, if you click on the customer summary page, then you will be able to see, once they save their responses, then you'll be able to see their responses on the customer summary page. Another area that you can take a look at is the customer emails. The customer email tool allows you to send, customized emails or standard emails to your customers, and those will only go to the people that are in your customer group. Then we also have export tools, number 7. And the export tools will allow you to export the customer's information as well as view their assessment results. All right. So we did have a question in a previous previous webinar. It says, well, I don't understand why would I want to use customer groups with, people that aren't in specifically in this program or certain program. Well, as some examples from the field, we do have areas around the state where they do actually have their customers. They use customer groups, the general customer groups, on a regular basis. And whether it's a new resource room customer, or they walk in, or they're in an orientation, and they're directed to set up their Illinois workNet account and complete the activities. And then whenever they have a chance or they have an appointment to talk to a career counselor, the career counselor has all that information right at their fingertips, so they can easily work with them on the next steps. Now, the same thing with the IWDS customers. Now, what I'm specifically thinking about here are the Summer Youth Employment Program, but it can be used with the other, especially as we move forward and we take a look at some of our next steps. You'll be able to see that we'll have different activities that will be available, and during these activities, they can use these as different steps to help have the customer complete the information that's required. They can take a look and monitor their progress on looking up this information and providing it. It's also a tool that can help provide guidance on their next steps on the things that they're supposed to be doing. Plus, you can use that email tool to send information about upcoming events or deadlines, or just in general other reminders that you would like to send out to your customer group. Now, this is specifically the customer. These are the the activities that are available. We have currently 11 activities that are available where the individual can save their responses. So all they do, they just simply click on the link, and it takes them to an activity. They fill out the form, save the responses, and the workforce professional can view the responses. They do have a pre-assessment that's not required. They can complete that. There's a post-assessment that is, they can take it in an unlimited number of times, and once they successfully complete the post-assessment with a score of 70% or higher, then they can access their certificate of completion. Now, another thing that's really nice about having these activities online that we found out is that you can have the activities translated in multiple languages. So far, we have the language translator, and right now we've really tweaked the Spanish, and we're working on the Russian as well. But there are other languages that are available as well, and these would be good to use with individuals who may have English as a second language. Is the My Activity it's open to all customers or just SYEP participants? These activities are open to all customers. And the next tool I want to talk about are the career interest surveys, especially for those that are relatively new to Illinois WorkNet. We do have different interest surveys that are available. I'm going to zoom into this just a little bit for you. And the customer can go in and take any of these surveys. And once now they'll have to be within their Illinois WorkNet account, take these surveys, and once they save their results, then they can go back and view the results later, or they can retake the survey. Now, as a workforce professional, what you're going to see when you click on that link, remember there's a link that says View Interest Surveys, you will see this link, and you'll be able to see which surveys that they've completed, and then you can click on the link. You can select the interest profile that you'd like to look at, and then you can click on the link, and you'll be able to see the responses or what the results were for their survey. The next tool that I had mentioned before in the customer group is the email tool. Let me zoom in here so it's easier for you to see. You can select customer email, and then right now what we have are some standard emails, which means you can send them an email to update their information. We have specifically with the missing SSN. That was really for the summer youth, but you can still do that, especially if you know that they're going to be in IWDS and you want to make that connection to their IWDS account. Now, you can also send a custom email. So to do that, you would select a custom email, and then there's a link here to click to enter the data for the custom email. Once you do that, you can enter your subject and your text, and then send it out to the people that are within your customer group. Okay, hold on. Okay, now I saw some questions. Do they have to give us permission? No, we do not have. They do not have to give you permission right now. So what this does, keep that in mind with the updates that we're going to be. I'm going to be showing you here in just a moment. It'll help with that. We'll be using more of an invitation process, so they will be, accepting to be added to the group. So we'll take a look at that in just a minute. And as far as to view the surveys, if you're talking, how to view the surveys, let me scroll up here for a moment. The interest surveys that I was talking about are specifically the interest profiler, skills profiler, work importance locator, and so forth. And Joe had a question, is it possible to customize any surveys? Right now, these are tools that come from CIS, and it's a single sign-on. We pass the information, or they can access the information and save it directly within their Illinois WorkNet account. So the career interest surveys are not customizable at this time. And the other question is, do you move people from group to group? I saw your question there, Dee, and it's a good question, but let me hold off on that, and I think it'll be more clear whenever we get to talking about the IWDS customers, okay? But it is a good question. Let me zoom in here just a little bit so it's easier for you to see. Okay, so with all this customer group activity that we've had, we do have some lessons learned. And based on our lessons learned from our Summer Youth Employment Program, from the case manager workflow studies that have been conducted, and also feedback from the field, these are the recommendations that we have, and it's to make setting up groups easier for workforce professionals. And what this means is little or no searching for customers to add them to a group. I should hear lots of people clapping. If I didn't have you guys muted, I'm sure I'd hear lots of people clapping right now. So that was a big one, that feedback from the field. Another one is a single sign-on for workforce professionals accounts and with IWDS. So that way you can just simply log into your IWDS account and you're automatically within your Illinois WorkNet workforce professional account as well. Have an interface that automatically creates an Illinois WorkNet account when a person is entered into IWDS. So therefore, you don't have to send out a separate request for that person to set up their Illinois WorkNet account. If they already have an Illinois WorkNet account and they have their social number in their Illinois WorkNet account, it can make the connection to their IWDS account, or it'll go ahead and automatically make an Illinois WorkNet account for them. So the customer doesn't have to have a duplicate effort as well. And then the other recommendation is to have an interface that will automatically provide activities and guidance based on the services that the customer is registered for within IWDS. So what this means is it's just another tool to provide guidance based on the services that they are that they're registered for. So let me go over to my Universal Customer page here. I'm going to make this big so you can see it, and then I'll have you answer some polling questions. But before we do that, let's take a look at our current process versus the proposed process. When we get started here, I have on this flow chart WP, and that's the workforce professional. It's a kind of a pinkish color, and that's to indicate the steps that a workforce professional has to do. The bluish color is what a customer has to do, and the white is an automatic activity. Maybe neither one, the system automatically does it. So with the current process, the Illinois WorkNet coordinator has to set up an Illinois WorkNet account or specified workforce professional. So only certain people can set up customer groups. Now, the Illinois WorkNet, then once that customer group is set up, then the coordinator has to assign workforce professionals to the group. Once the workforce professional is added to the group, then they have to tell their customers to set up an Illinois WorkNet account, complete the activities, and so forth. Then the customer sets up an account. And once the customer sets up an account, then the workforce professional searches for the individual in the Illinois WorkNet database, and they add customers to the customer group. So the proposed change is that we now allow our workforce professionals to create their own customer groups. Okay? So you don't have to wait for a coordinator or some specific person to set up a customer group. You have the power to set up your own customer group. Now with that, whenever you set up your customer group, then it prints out or creates a link that you can send to your customers, and this is an invitation. And the invitation will explain why would you be, what's the benefits of, being added to this group. It'll contain the workforce professional's contact information, and that way they know who's sending this request and it's not somebody random. And then with the next steps or instructions. So it'll tell them if you would like to accept to be part of this group, go ahead and click here. They click there on the link, and then the customer follows the link to join the group and agrees. And if they have an Illinois WorkNet account, then great, they're added to the group. If they don't have an Illinois WorkNet account, then they would be, excuse me, they would be prompted to set up an Illinois WorkNet account, and once they've completed that process, then the customer is automatically added to the customer group. So then as we scroll down, this is just kind of a sample, kind of visualization, a mock-up of what this might look like. This is just a general screen capture from what our customer groups look like. You would set up your customer group. You would be prompted to, you have a link that where you could add your customer. Once you click to add your customer, then you can select, do you want the standard email invitation, or do you want the customized invitation? Do you want to send it to the different email addresses that you might have? Do you want it to check to see if there's already an Illinois WorkNet? It can also send them an Illinois WorkNet message. Do you want to print the invitation for a mailing or for your orientation or your workshop? And then you would have a place to enter your email addresses to send your invitation. Now you would also be able to add other workforce professionals to your groups. So if you work with a team that works with a specific group of people, then you can have multiple workforce professionals have access to those customers. So the next step, and this goes into more of the questions that you had, D. Make this, oh wait a minute, I'm sorry. Let me go back to my universal customers. I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to go ahead and ask you some questions. I'd like you to fill out the polling questions. Now keeping in mind with this process, we're talking about our general customer groups. And our general customers are those that are outside of IWDS or the universal self-access customers. Maybe they're in IWDS, but the point is that they are not required to be in IWDS to be in these customer groups. Okay, the question is everyone open to create a customer group or just the Illinois WorkNet coordinators? Very good question. Currently, with the current process, only Illinois WorkNet coordinators and workforce professionals that have been specified, that have been given access by the state staff. The proposal is to let all workforce professionals be able to create their customer groups, but there's an invitation process, so they just don't have willy-nilly access to everybody's information. The customer has to agree and accept the invitation into the group. See some more activity still going on the poll, so I'll just give you another moment to a little bit more activity over here. Alrighty. Okay, well, thank you. And we're going to switch over to the IWDS because now we're talking about another group of customers. And these customers are for specifically referring to those that are entered into IWDS. And again, we still have the same color coding as before. The current process is the same as what we just went through. We rely on the coordinator set up for starters, the workforce professional enters the customers into IWDS. Now that's just general. Then the process is the same. I can enlarge, here you know what I'll do? I'm going to, instead of enlarging out, I'm just going to zoom in. Is that better? I'll just kind of scroll. Okay? If I enlarge the screen too much, then you won't be able to use the chat. So let me just zoom in. So, okay, good. Okay, so here's what we do. We have the coordinator, again, sets up the account. We're relying on the coordinator to do that. And then, again, they allow the workforce professionals. Workforce professionals talk to the customers. Customers set up their account. They search for the customer in the database, and then they are added to the customer groups. That's the current process. Same thing as we just talked about before. Now, the proposed process, you'll see has a lot more white in it, which I'm sure those that have participated in Summer Youth will be very excited about that. because the white is something that the system automatically does for you. So instead of having the Illinois WorkNet coordinators set up customer groups for their areas, the starting of the point of the process is the workforce professional is given access to customer groups based on their user role within IWDS. So let's say you're a case manager and you work with youth, then you would have access, just as you would with an IWDS, you would have access to the customers in Illinois WorkNet and their user group. That would be youth. Those that only have access to adult would have access to adult. If you had access to both adult and youth, it would be the same as whatever you have in IWDS. Now, the workforce professional would enter the customer into IWDS, and then it would check to see if they have an Illinois WorkNet account. So if they don't have an Illinois WorkNet account, it creates one. If they do have an Illinois WorkNet account, it simply links to their account, and that would be based on their Social Security number. Once they have an Illinois WorkNet account, then they're added to the appropriate LWIA and to the appropriate customer group type. So we would have like a universal self-access or universal group for those that haven't been assigned yet to adult, youth, dislocated worker. Otherwise, they would go into, once they are assigned, then it would go directly, you wouldn't, as Dee had mentioned before, then do we have to move them back and forth here and there? No, they are placed in the groups based on how they are in IWDS. So it would automatically populate your, let's say, LWIA 5 adult group with those people. Okay. Now, then based on, and as Dee had kind of talked about before, the activities, customers provided recommended activities based on the services that they're registered for in IWDS. So currently, you can't create and customize your own activities, but this is your grand opportunity because we will be creating new activities for those services. So we would love to have your input on the creation of those activities. So we're working on that as well. Then the other part of that is we have an optional component where the workforce professional can set up their own filtered groups or subgroups, for their own workflow. So let's say you have a group and, Natasha is working at location A, and all I want to see are my 25 people for my location. I don't want to see everybody else's, so I just can create my own filter group so I have easy access to those customers. So with this is kind of a screen capture or a mock-up of what it might look like. Just as before, where we had our customer groups. So this is our broad area, and these are the customer groups that are automatically created by IWDS. Then we would have another category where they can create a case manager or workforce professional could create their own filtered groups. So if I had, my dislocated workers and I wanted it for a specific location or used for a specific location, I could name it, and I could just go over here, select the group that I want to originally choose from. If I have access to multiple adult, youth, dislocated worker, I select maybe I just want youth. I enter my group name, I enter a description, and then I can just simply go down and click on the checkbox next to each of their names and create my own little filtered group right there available. Okay, so the question was, if someone registers for WorkNet before they entered into IWDS, will the accounts work that way too? Yeah, because as long as they entered their Social Security number in their Illinois WorkNet account, as soon as they're entered into IWDS, it will automatically look for them. It'll look for their Social Security number and information so that it can make that connection with their account, and then based on that, it'll update the IWDS customer groups. Okay. Oh, okay. When is this going to be live? Well, we're working on this process right now, and so with this, I'm working out the details so we can get your feedback to make sure we're all going in the right direction. We feel pretty confident that we are, based on the feedback and lessons learned from our previous experiences. But this is just to verify that this is a step in the right direction, and that we can collect your feedback and incorporate it into the design while we're doing it from the front end. So if you want to go ahead and answer some of these polling questions, that'd be fabulous. Let me read. See, can SSN be added to a workNet account at a later time? Yes. And will that addition of the SSN then link the two accounts? I don't know. I would guess that here's the situation. If they have an IWDS account and it didn't make a connection with their Illinois workNet account originally, then it's not going to, let me go back. You can't have two Illinois workNet accounts with the same Social Security number. So if they already have an IWDS account, that was an Illinois workNet account that was created through IWDS, it won't let them update that other account because you can't have two Social Security numbers that are the same within Illinois workNet. But otherwise, it would be checking for those accounts. But we are talking about looking at different ways also to verify that information. So, but I'll bring up that point again as we talk further about this. Okay, so it won't make a core entry into IWDS for someone if they're using workNet. Core entry. I'm not really 100% sure exactly what you're asking there. But this is the starting point, and so we are working on ways that the two systems can work together. And so if there's something that it would help you with, like tracking, let's see, if someone in the Resource Center may not have seen a case manager yet, but they're using the system. Okay, so it won't make a core entry into IWDS if they're using workNet. Okay, so if they're not in IWDS, then they're just put in there as a universal self-access customer. But once they are entered into IWDS, even if they're entered into IWDS and they haven't been designated as an adult use dislocated worker, one of those type of categories, then they would just go under universal. Does that make sense? Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, your question was, or your comment was, I think when we enter them, when they come to the Resource Center, anyway, so they should already be in there. So yes, they would be already in there, and they would be in there as a universal customer. Okay. Let's see, I'm not seeing any activity on the polling. I think I've been chatting a while here. So I'm just going to go ahead and close the polling questions here. And I'm going to go ahead and go to our next slide, which is discussing the next steps. So we broke this into several phases. And one of the phase one was to allow individuals to access the activities, because as I mentioned before, they were just available for the Summer Youth Employment Program. And now we have 11 activities that are available to everyone. As we move forward, which is what we're working on now, is to auto-update the customer data between the Illinois workNet and IWDS, create new activities, especially, identifying any gaps that we have. If we have something that's specifically for youth, specifically for adults, specifically for adult dislocated worker, and we can start adding those. I know, as we move forward and there's more requirements, I'm sure that we can add additional activities at that time as well. And then we do have that tool from the Summer Youth Employment Program, the worksite evaluation. It's not currently in the customer group, but where it makes sense, and again, this would be a good topic for, I could use your feedback as to where it makes sense to incorporate that worksite evaluation and when to make it available. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the phase 3, which is we're actually using our the services that the customers are registered for within IWDS to recommend activities. Now, what I'd ask of you is, if you're not already, let me speak out a little bit. If you're not already familiar with the My Activities, to go ahead and take a look at those. We do have resources on the individuals pathway as well as the workforce professionals pathway. And we do have forums that are available to help you, to provide, where you can provide suggestions to additional activities, or you can, email them to me or to the info at, and they will get to me. You can also, as you think about this and your activity suggestions, just identify which customers that you're suggesting the activities for. If it's something specific for adults, with work experience versus adults with little work experience, or youth, or different, maybe an experienced adult would be your dislocated worker, maybe the adult with little experience, I don't know, would get a different set of activities, and so forth. And also watch for our future surveys and webinar announcements, because I'm sure we'll be having many more of them to collect your feedback as we move forward as well. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them. Let me read Dee's question. Is there going to be a way to customize, activities in case we need them to do additional ones to the Illinois workNet? We haven't discussed that, but we can definitely put that out there on the drawing board. Oh, and there was a question from how will this new process work with the current process? Will workNet and IWDS reports become one report? I don't know at this point in time. I don't know there hasn't been any discussion of, as far as I know, will workNet and IWDS, I'm not sure specifically which reports you're referring to, but this is really, the goal of this is to make it easy for you to have your customers be able to have a guidance approach that they could just follow, online, have all their information stored within the activities so you could easily access that, or, if you needed to change over to a different case manager, they could easily access that and have it at your fingertips, and also so you could monitor their progress and so forth. So as far as reporting, we used it to update, the goal field for the SYEP, and where that makes sense in the future, then I'm sure there will be that connection between IWDS and Illinois workNet, but those haven't been specifically addressed at this time. Oh, tracking new registrants. I don't know that it would be one report right now, but anyway, I can bring it up to DCO and talk to them about it too. Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to go through this information. Again, please do provide feedback on using the forum.